Hello YouTube, we are back with another video for you all today, and this one is a different type of deck discussion video. Now that we have BT-14 just about wrapping up and EX5 just around the corner, we are going to be revisiting some older decks, particularly ones that we've had featured on our channel, and the first one we're going to be doing is Yellow Vaccine. For those of you who did not see the video or are new to our channel, I'll link that video in the description down below. And what I'll be doing in this particular segment is going over my original build, how it performed, what I noticed while playing the deck at locals and, physically playing with the cards for the first time after theory crafting it for so long, what changes I've made to the deck since playing my original build, and I'll also be going over why I made some of the changes that I made, which was something that was requested by some of you folks in the comments of our previous deck discussion videos. So, as always, please let us know what you think. What else you would like to see from our channel. We do want to keep growing for you guys, so any suggestions are welcome, and we just love interacting with you guys. Our socials are linked down below, which includes our Twitter, our Instagram, our Discord, as well as our TCG player affiliate link. And without further ado, let's hop right into the video. Alrighty, so before we get too ahead of ourselves, I have shot a photo of my original build here, and the link will be in the video description below. This deck was definitely a fun one for me to play. At the start of BT-14, for me, it just really felt like a breath of fresh air, with how versatile and how, I guess, open-ended the deck was. BT-13 was also a very, very, stale and long format for a lot of us. So having just new cards to play with overall was very refreshing. And Yellow Vaccine was a deck that I just was really, really looking forward to play with. TJ, if you're watching this, he and I spent countless amount of hours just theory crafting and bouncing ideas off of each other. So we both were just extremely, extremely excited to play this deck, and for us, it really didn't disappoint. We both had very different builds, but the build that I had, crafted was more of an angel focused build, as you could probably see in some of the ratios. Our locals actually had a lot of Yellow Vaccine players. So our very own TJ, Gare, Rio, and Gabe, who's been on the channel as well, all had very different builds, and they all piloted in a different way, which is really, really fun to see, And for me, I felt like the deck that I put together was pretty consistent, surprisingly so. I felt that even in instances where I did find myself bricking, I was able to draw and cycle through my deck to unbrick myself pretty easily. I also felt like it did very well from a defensive standpoint. With the Angels archetype, you really are focusing on security manipulation, recovery, and playing a little bit more defensive and reactive, and I felt like this sort of played right into it. Had a lot more tools to work with, which I think made the deck super, super fun. And I was able to recover my way out of many difficult scenarios. I would often find myself, going against decks like Fenry Luga, D-Brigade, and, really aggressive low-to-the-ground decks like Red Hybrid as well. I find myself down to 1 security to start the turn, and I'm able to string over some combo plays, and I find myself back up to 5 or 6 security, right, in 1 turn, which is honestly insane. I also felt like the deck adapted very well, particularly to our local scene. We had a pretty wide variety or a wide spread of decks. We had Machine Dramon, D-Brigade, Shine Greymon, Fenry, Melga, Red Hybrid, Bloomlord as well, and I think this deck did very well against all of them. A lot of the matches that I had against, my locals players were very close, very competitive, and also just nice dialogue. There's a lot of back and forth and a lot of just, tit for tat between the players, which I thought was very, very fun. And it just was fun to play a pure yellow deck again as well. I think yellow has always been a color, in my opinion, that's been sort of put to the wayside. Blue, red, and now even now purple and green are all getting their sort of, the spotlight decks, right? They get a lot of time in the spotlight. The game focuses a lot on these colors, but I felt like yellow just as a pure color didn't get a lot of support. We've seen it sprinkled into decks like Shine Greymon, Mastamon, and stuff like that, but you never really see it as its own pure deck. And I think this is the first time in a while that yellow as an archetype got a core line of support that was meta relevant as well. And that was just really, really nice to see and really, really fun to play. And where I see the deck struggle, or where I saw the deck struggle, was I'd say just gas and aggression. Particularly my build, you know, I think looking at other builds like Gare's build or TJ's build, there's definitely ways that their decks are more aggressive than mine. But for me personally, I would find myself lacking the pace or that final push to really go for game. I felt there were plenty of situations where I find myself on the back foot kind of reacting to what my opponent wanted to do, which sometimes made it rough in terms of going for the win. I felt like at times I was playing simply to just like not lose and try to respond to what my opponent did to put myself back in the game, but I was never able to say, okay, I'm back, now I'm gonna take the game by the, you know, the scruff of its neck. I just felt like I was a reactive player and never really an aggressive player. You could argue that that's a stylistic thing, you know. I think there are definitely ways, and as many people have pointed out in the videos that I've been in, you know, other plays that maybe optimized the deck or optimized plays that maybe I didn't see. So it could be a stylistic thing, but for me personally, I just felt like the deck at times did feel one-dimensional where I was a reactive defensive player, but when I needed to switch gears, it did struggle for me at least. And I also, with how much I recovered and how much I drew like through my deck, as many of our locals can attest to, I was just notorious for being the guy who just drew. There are many locals where I would go like 1 win and 3 draws, or like 3 draws and no wins, no loss. Like it was probably the most I have drawn ever in an entire meta by far. I had a lot of fun playing it. My opponents maybe not so much, but it just felt like, you know, I would be there to just not lose, which, you know, sometimes was frustrating for both sides, you know. So, you know, what did I do to take all that in, right? So I did make some minor adjustments that I felt still kept the core aspect and the core ideas of the deck, but I felt like these tweaks did give it a little bit of an extra push to be that much more aggressive, to help me keep up the pace and also be able to say, look, I'm going to push the tempo now and I'm going to be more aggressive. So here are some of the changes that I made. Here's the new photo of it. This will also be linked in the video description down below. But why don't we take some time now to highlight some of my new choices and why I'm using them. So the first new piece is Bulkmon from BT-14. I use him as a 2-of. I did take out one Gatomon and I believe the Geogreymon in order to fit him in. Mainly, I like to see this guy early. So if I can either mulligan for him or just hopefully get him off of a TK or a search or whatnot, I think he's good for like a turn 1 or 2 play if you have the Patamon in the back. Because what you can basically do is push up your Patamon. You can Digivolve into Bulkmon if you know it's in security or you've put it in security. And then you proc your Karamon's jamming effect. You can go ahead, swing for 2 checks jamming at turn 2. So now you've already chipped your opponent down to 3 security potentially. They've got a level 4 with jamming potentially next turn that they have to deal with and get rid of. So you're already sort of pushing yourself onto the front foot with that play. And that allows your Seraphi plays when you can get into it, right? You know, if it does swing for 2 checks and lives, I mean, your opponent's probably down to 1, if not 0 security pretty quickly if they can't, you know, deal with all of your bodies and all your plays. So I think Bulkmon is good for that early aggression piece. Late game with how much redirect and blockers are, you know, it's iffy. But I think early game, like a turn 1 or 2 Bulkmon is like really good gas for you. It gives you that extra advantage, you know, that I think this deck was missing. Next choice piece is Rice Greymon from BT2. I really just use him for the inheritable. I don't really like having tamers proc without effects, but I do see the value in that as well. Like sometimes, like even if you don't get to proc the BT-14 TK effect, it is nice to just be able to have one on board. So if you're gonna do, you know, recovery or vaccine shenanigans, you have another TK ready to go, which is not bad. And Seraphimon potentially swinging for 3 checks jamming with this inheritable can be really scary. The criteria to get your check +1 is just having 3 tamers on board, which with this deck is extremely easy to do. There have been many games where I find myself with like 7 or 8 TKs on the field, so it's really not that difficult to get that +1 inheritable. So that's why I chose to just sneak him in as a 2 of, mainly because of that aggression and how well it pairs with Seraphimon. In order to fit him in, I did trim down 1 Magna Ace and 1 EX1 Angelmon, which I thought was a reasonable sort of trade-off. Next, we're going to be running 2 new level 6s, the first of which is Venusmon, which I think is just pretty self-explanatory. The blanket effect of this card is just way too good, right? You know, being able to blanket security effect on all of your opponent's Digimon, shut them down for basically a turn. They can't proc when Digivolving effects, which shuts down Fenry to a T, shuts down when attacking effects, which again shuts down decks like Fenry, D-Brigade, etc. Like all of those decks rely on those effects, and Venus shuts them down. So I think Venus actually is a pretty good counter, and the fact that it's also a vaccine is a huge bonus as well. You know, one play that I think is particularly dirty is being like Venus, then shutting them down, they pass turn, then you go into a ruin mode to kind of either board wipe and put that extra essence of control. I think is just really, really good, you know. So I think Venus is a good top end for this deck. I'm only running her at a 1 of. I think there's a world where I try to bump her up to 2, but I wanted to sneak this guy in, which is War Greymon from BT-4. I just really love this card. If I can find a reason to sneak him into any deck, I will definitely try. Back in the day, he was one of my favorite just like top ends to go into and just swing, unsuspend, and kind of pull off shenanigans that way. He pairs very, very well with the Rise Greymon as well. You know, if you think about swinging 2 checks with him, jamming, and then restanding, and then doing it again, is again really good aggression and can be a very sneaky way to go for game, which, you know, can catch opponents off guard. Being able to neg 60 DP is also not insignificant given how much DP reduction that you have going for you with this effect, with Magna Ace's effect, with Seraphi effect, Ruin Mode's effect. So I think you have a lot of value in this card, which is why I wanted to use him as at least of a 1 of tech. I would not sacrifice like Seraphi or Venus for him, but I do think with, again, how much you can cycle through your deck, you're going to be seeing these pieces, and sometimes it's just about making sure you find the right time and the right scenario to use him. So I like him, and I think he's definitely a good supporting piece for this deck. So moving forward, right, you know, that does do it for all our changes. Like I said, the photo will be in the description down below for those who missed it, so feel free to check it out there. You know, I think moving forward, this deck is still going to be very fun and still very strong as well when you kind of look at the meta contenders, even into EX5 and BT-14. I also feel like that, you know, this deck is one that allows a lot of room for player expression and stylistic expression. As I've said before, you know, myself, TJ, Rio, Gare, Gabe, and a few other people who've come to the shop as well, you know, everyone has a different yellow vaccine build, and everyone plays it differently too, which, you know, as just a card game aficionado, like, it's just really fun to see, right? Like, you could go up against another yellow vaccine player and just have 2 totally different ways of approaching the deck, and you can learn so much more about the deck the more you play it, which I think is just super refreshing. Meta gets stale so fast, right? It's always nice to win. It's always nice to, like, have the best deck in format in your hands, right? And do those big Unga Bunga plays that, you know, make it meta. But there's also, I think, sort of a, not to sound too romantic here, but like there's sort of a nice satisfaction and a nice delicacy to say, look, like, I'm learning more about this deck. I've made some tweaks, I've made some changes, and I'm still learning about this deck. I can still tweak it to make it more optimal. I can tweak it to do something else. I'm missing this sort of thing in my local scene. I want to be able to do this. I can tweak this deck to do that exactly and still keep tweaking it. You know, like, there's so much you can do with this deck, and I think Vaccine as an archetype is just so expansive that this deck will always feel refreshing for me. And that's why I really enjoy playing it. That's why I feel really passionate about this deck. So hopefully you guys did enjoy it, you know, and hopefully some of that passion bled through, and you can check this deck out if you haven't. If you do play Yellow Vaccine, I would be super curious to see what you guys have to say or what you guys have to think about all this. Let me know what your builds are. Send me deck profiles. I love to see what you guys have tinkered with and are playing at locals, and hopefully we can build more and theorycraft more together. So that will do it for the video. As I said, hope you all enjoyed it. Feel free to leave a comment down below with your thoughts and feedback. Interacting with you guys has always given us as a team a fresh take on this game, and it's really sort of rejuvenated us. So it is extremely welcome, and we're really thankful for all the support. The channel is growing, and we're really, really close to 1,000 subs. So if you could hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't subscribed to the channel, that would mean the world to us right now. And we'll hope to see you in our socials. Like I said above, they'll be linked in the video description below. And we'll catch you on the next video, guys. Thank you all for tuning in as always. And bye-bye.